The phrase Steel Soul appears a couple of times in Hollow Knight. The first is the name of the game mode in which the knight does not respawn upon death, and the second is the title of a character who only appears in that mode, Steel Soul Jinn. But what does the phrase Steel Soul really mean in the context of Hollow Knight, its gameplay, and its lore? How are the two instances of the phrase connected? I'll be explaining my speculations in this video. First, let's talk about Steel Soul mode. If the player completes the game in this mode, the congratulatory message from Team Cherry after the end credits reads that the player has proven themselves to have a Steel Soul. In Hollow Knight, soul usually refers to the animating force inside the bodies of all living things, which is integral to the game's lore and story. This soul is said to contain, or at least reflect, the thoughts, feelings, and nature of its owner, even after it is passed from their body upon death. For the name of the game mode, Steel Soul likely represents that the player and the knight both have determination as hard as steel. If this is the case, however, why would something as hard as steel relate to the knight if they don't respawn upon death and are therefore more fragile in this game mode? I think we can actually look to the HUD for clues. Its design visually represents the idea of Steel Soul, as a special steel border surrounds the knight's soul gauge and masks of health. The thing to take note of is what happens to this HUD if the knight dies, and how that differs from the HUD in Classic Play mode. In Classic mode, only the top 1/3 of the soul meter breaks, representing the portion of it that will remain broken until the knight reclaims their shade. If we look closely at the HUD during a Steel Soul death, the gauge breaks right in the center. In Classic mode, the gauge appears to be made out of the same material as the knight's shell, whereas in Steel Soul it's made of glass, representing the fragility of the knight's life in that mode. The Game Over screen then shows the steel frame of the HUD shattered into pieces. So altogether, the Steel Soul mode HUD represents the steel of the knight's determination and the fragility of their life, and when one breaks, so does the other. Now let's talk about Jinn. She is present in Steel Soul mode instead of Confessor Gigi. But I feel like the fact that she's an entirely different character is for a reason. They could have just made Gigi the one to purchase rancid eggs in Steel Soul mode, but they deliberately made an entire new character for that role with unique lore. Like Gigi, Jinn is found in the cave to the far east of Dirtmouth, which requires a simple key to unlock, and she is initially asleep in there until the knight wakes her up. Jinn does have a name and gender, of which the knight has neither, although she does refer to herself as it rather than she. She refers to herself using a mix of first and third person, and never uses second person for the knight, instead opting for third. When Jinn first encounters the knight, she makes some cryptic observations about them, assuming they're the one she's talking about and not herself or someone else. The terms blank, long shadow, and dull all seem to refer to the knight's vessel nature. She also describes the knight as brave, even though they're supposed to have no mind or emotions. Strangely, she also says no soul, but that seems like it can't be true for the knight in any capacity based on evidence found elsewhere in the game. Like all vessels, the knight was born from the soul of worm and root. Other vessels give off soul when hit, and vessels have a soul, as in a spirit, observed in the lost kin. Either way, she is also able to tell when they acquire the King's Brand and the Void Heart. There is most likely a reason that Jinn is in Dirtmouth doing what she does. She mentions her masters, who likely put her into her position. The only thing she ultimately seems compelled to do, at least when the knight is around, is conduct trade. Her dialogue always circles back to it eventually. We can infer then that trade is what her masters ordered her to do. She understands that trade means the exchange of geo for items or one item for another. Even though she does not want the knight's rancid eggs for herself, she knows that some use will be made of them, and of her. As for why Jinn was locked away, she had probably exceeded her usefulness or purpose at a certain point, likely the decline of Hallownest, and was locked away by her masters until she would be needed or desired to be used again. Her masters are not known to be around during the events of the game, possibly because they either left Hallownest or died, and Sly probably found one of their keys that had been left behind. Besides not wanting the eggs for herself, Jinn has some other particular feelings about trading. She mentions that the individuals she acquired her large amount of geo from may have been either helped or hurt by her doing so. She also says that her masters don't seek order, and that makes them different from the Pale King. Since they didn't seek order, perhaps Jinn was made to conduct trade in a way that was unfair to those she traded with. She doesn't like having a large amount of geo not only for seemingly this reason, but because it takes up space in her home. She understands that geo has monetary value, but she personally doesn't see any meaning in it, basically the exact opposite of Sly and Leg Eater. She wants to get rid of this geo, but only knows to do so through trade. We can draw some comparisons between Gigi and Jinn, and what we know about Gigi will help us better understand Jinn. Gigi too was locked away in the cave, although in her case it was likely either self-imposed to protect or deliberately isolate herself, or it was done by someone else concerned about the noises she was making. Gigi also mentions her masters, which may very well be the same ones as Jinn's. Gigi is even implied to be the one to whom Jinn will give the rancid eggs sold to her by the knight because Gigi likes them, and Jinn and Gigi would likely know each other through their shared masters. In the Hollow Knight Wanderer's journal book, Alina the Chronicler records meeting both Confessor Gigi and Steel Soul Jinn. Also like Jinn, Gigi seems to be somewhat reluctant in her role. Her services involve helping others face their regrets, which she believes to manifest as dark stains on the world. She seems to fear darkness, however, as evidenced by her dream nail dialogue and the fact that she hides whenever the night's shade is in her room. Back to the main topic of this video, meaning of the phrase Steel Soul. Soul is an animating force, so in Jinn's case, could her title mean that Steel replaces Soul for her, or even that she is animated by Steel in addition to Soul? Almost every creature in the game has some way to get Soul from it, if not by being hit with the nail, then being struck with the dream nail, or the soul being gathered by the weaverlings spawned by Weaversong if Grubsong is also equipped. Perhaps for Jinn, it represents the steel and soul that she is made of coming together to make her who and what she is. But there's another character, this one being from Silksong, with a title containing the word steel, Steel Assassin Sharp. So what about Jinn specifies having soul in her title? Could it refer to her powers of sensing and observation? Actually, I think the answer is also where the meaning of Steel Soul as in the game mode comes together with Steel Soul as in Jinn's title. As previously discussed, having a Steel Soul means having strong determination like the knight has when they're going about their journey through Hallownest while knowing the risk of permanent death. As for Jinn, she seems determined to do what she was assigned to do, and for her specifically, at least currently or most recently, that means conducting trade, even if there may be aspects of it that she doesn't like or necessarily want to engage in. She was likely given the title Steel Soul because her purpose would always be to do what she was made to do, possibly no matter what that turned out to be. For all we know, she may not be the only individual to ever have this title. I want to conclude with some other interesting observations about Jinn's nature. She claims not to know much about herself because her mind is too young to understand such things. This implies that if she existed for longer, she may gain that understanding. She does know, however, that she is different from the Knight in that the Knight is a mortal being, whereas she will last in a way that they won't. It is entirely possible that Jinn was not born, but created or manufactured and then given some sort of animating force to bring her to life. In some ways, Jinn is not that different from the Vessels, in that she too was created to serve a particular purpose and have little to no will, thought, or feelings, yet she does. So what do you think? Do you agree with my speculations? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching this video. Please consider sharing it and subscribing to my channel if you like. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time.